There was silence, and I could tell in the look of their faces something really wrong has occurred. I looked in the face of one of the gentlemen that I knew really well. I said, "You've got to tell me what happened." And I will never forget the look that came across his face and that deep sigh that he took when he said, "Fred's been shot." I said, "You've got to get me to where he is." I handed him my car. The woman said, "I'll take her to the hospital." I remembered, oh my goodness, Cassidy's in the car. Alyssa's in the church building somewhere. Some women had come to the side of the car and were talking to Cassidy. And then my friend was coming down the road, and I said to her, "Please get Alyssa, get Cassidy." To this day, I don't even really know how she did all of that, but she did. She got them and took care of them. I hopped in the car, went down to the hospital, called my brother Jeff, who lives in St. Louis, and said, "You've got to get over here really quick. Fred's been shot." As soon as we pulled up to the emergency room, a helicopter took off. And my first thought was, oh no, he has been hurt so bad, he's got to go to St. Louis. And the lady said, "You know what, stay right here in the car just for a second. Let me go in and find out what's going on." So I did, and she came back in just a minute and said, "He's still here." I said, "Okay, that is really good news." So I went in, and I immediately met with the charge nurse, and he began telling me how serious Fred's injuries were. And even after he told me and how bad Fred's injuries were, it never even once occurred to me that Fred wasn't going to be okay. Actually, the exact opposite was true. I thought, you know what, he's going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. We are going to beat this. This is going to be okay. And in just a minute or two, he said, "Would you like to see your husband?" And I thought, yeah, I would. This is great. They're going to let me see him. Awesome. He said, "Give me just a minute, and you can go in and see him." And it literally really was just a minute. And I went in to see him. When I walked into the room, the first thing I noticed were Fred's feet. They were like sticking out right there. And I remember looking at his feet, and they were like this really weird yellow color. I remember thinking, that is really weird that his feet are yellow. And as I walked in, the backs of everybody was to me. And I was just overwhelmed by all they were doing to help Fred. And I said, "Thank you so much for everything that you were doing to help my husband." And as soon as I said that, one of the nurses turned around. And she had tears coming down her face. And she said, "I am so sorry." I said, "You're sorry?" And she said, "I'm so sorry for your loss." And I said, "You mean he's dead?" And she said, "Yeah, we just called it." And I'm not really sure who caught me, but I just remember every ounce of strength in my body just left. The only thing I really know to compare that kind of panic to and sense of helplessness, it's sort of like being in like a haunted house where you just are terrified and you can't find an exit sign, or the nightmare that you just can't wake up from. I had never been so afraid in my entire life. They told me that there was this room that I could go to that's for families. So I left that room and I began walking down the hall. And I remember as I was walking down that hall, I saw a bed just sitting in the hallway. And all I wanted to do was lie on that bed and go to sleep and just somehow get away from the nightmare that I felt like I was in. I went into that room for families, and it was the darkest room I have ever been in my entire life. And just waves of helplessness and panic and sadness just kept sweeping over me. And I thought the one person I needed the most at that time couldn't be there. And I just felt so numb and helpless. And I'm not sure how long I sat there. I'm not sure. A lot of people were coming in and out. And I really couldn't grasp all of that in my mind at that time. But as I sat there was a point where God spoke to me. And God said, Cindy, what happened here was sheer evil, and it was orchestrated by Satan. And I said out loud, and I could have very well sounded pretty crazy to whoever was in that room at that time, but I said out loud, I said, then Satan will not win. He will not win. And what I was saying there was that with the last ounce of strength that I had, that I was going to find a way to come back from this, that with God's help and grace in my life, that I would come back. And that moment was so divine for me because it was the very building block that God used to begin putting my life back together again. And even though I felt sheer panic at that moment, God was in that dark room with me. That's where God was. I made arrangements for Alyssa and Cassie to be brought to the hospital. And as they were arriving, so was my brother Jeff. And the four of us went back into that dark room. You know, one of your responsibilities as parents is to protect your children. What do we protect our kids from? We protect them from everything, right? From sharp objects, from germs, from skin cancer, from bullies. If there is anything that is potentially bad for our kids, we put as much distance between them and our kids as we possibly can. That's what we do as parents. No one tells us to do that. We just do that. And I never, ever thought that I was going to have to place before my children the pain that I was getting ready to at that moment. When Alyssa was about 5 months old, I enrolled her in this swimming class at the Y called Aqua Tots. And I loved taking her to those classes, and she loved to swim. She just loved to swim. But one of the best things about taking her to those classes was that I had found this adorable little pink swimming suit that I got to put her in every week. And it was pink, and it had lace on the front, a little ruffle that went all the way around. I didn't realize until I became a mom of a daughter that there are so many accessories that are available to you as a mom of a daughter. And if you are a mother or a grandmother of a little girl, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I still have a hard time going to a children's clothing store, not going over to the little girl section and checking out like all the bows and the dresses and the tights and everything that go along with them. It's just wonderful. I love it. Well, as soon as the weather turned warm, we got a little kiddie pool and we set it on our back deck because she loved to swim so much. And one day she was out there swimming in her little pink swimming suit in the kiddie pool, and before I could get to her, she had crawled out of the swimming pool and she crawled across the deck and she got splinters in her knees. And I remember I had to hold her down and get the splinters out. And the look that she gave me when I had to do that was horrible as I inflicted that pain on her. It just made me sick to have to do it. Well, here I was getting ready to lay something before these girls that was going to break their hearts. Like the next words out of my mouth was just going to be heart-wrenching for them. And I remember feeling like I kind of was in this gap of time, like I was getting ready to take them out of one world and put them into another world that was unfair and cruel and harsh. And man, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it because it was my desire to protect them, to not have to make them suffer. I just thought, it's going to be hard enough for me, but why them? Because they no longer would be able to say the word dad and have something to answer. And I just felt like I laid the weight of the world on them. And I hated that. And I just watched their little hearts break into 1,000 pieces that day. And what amazes me is I have had to watch my children suffer that day and in the days to follow. And as I have watched it rip my heart to shreds, is that God, in His love for us, willingly and intentionally sent His Son to die on the cross for us so that we wouldn't have to.